all, welcome back. Today we're gonna do a vinyasa flow to really open and lengthen, also even learn where the big psoas muscle is in our body, the hip flexor, which with today's lifestyle, sitting a lot can tend to be very tight and cause different abnormalities such as bad posture or even back pain. So with this class, hopefully we'll be able to lengthen it and even feel where it is so we can be more aware of this very vital muscle. So we're going to start in Virasana with our knees together, heels outside of our thighs, making sure our sits bones are grounded and we're able to lengthen through the crown of the head. For many, this might feel like too much. The ankle might really feel tight, the foot, or even if we feel too much pressure in the knees. So you can take it one leg at a time. So you can lengthen the right leg forward and just do one leg at a time. In whatever version you're taking, we're going to let ourselves ground through the breath, letting ourselves land fully in the space. Letting ourselves be fully present. Gently opening the eyes, just briefly. And whichever version you're doing, you're going to place your hands behind you and walk them back. Maybe you'll be able to place your forearms, or maybe you'll be able to place the whole back onto the mat. Try to make sure that the knees don't separate too much. You're trying to keep that alignment that we first set up. And we're going to start to feel the front part of our body. So feeling as we're opening the front of the legs, the front of the hips. That's where we'll work on most for today's class. And try not to resist it. Try to surrender as your torso melts down. As we open the front body, we begin to open that hip flexor muscle, which goes all the way from the low back, all the way around the hip to the front of the hip. So sometimes we might feel a little low back pain, but really what can be hurting or causing the pain is that psoas muscle that can be very tight. And wherever you are, gently lifting yourself back up from where you came from. If you had one leg lengthened, we're going to switch legs now. If you did both legs, then we're going to go down once again. So from here, if you switched legs, just once again taking a couple deep breaths, letting yourself land here. Maybe closing your eyes or keeping your eyes open, whatever feels best. I know this is a lot. It can be a deep stretch. It's a great stretch for the whole front body, all the way from the front of the foot, the shins, front of the legs. And once we lay down, we'll now gently, once again, place our hands behind us and begin to lower the torso. Maybe just placing the forearms, or maybe the whole torso, the whole back. And now we'll begin to feel that opening as well in the front of the torso, the hips, as we surrender here. Keeping the awareness in the breath to really focus on what's going on right now, any sensation, physical sensation, or mental, what's going on in the mind. And now gently, once again, coming all the way up through neutral, lengthening through the spine. And now we're going to place our hands in front of us, coming into a tabletop position. To counter a little bit of what we just did, we're going to lengthen the right leg back, placing all toes, pushing through the heel. Now countering that stretch in the front of the leg. So opening the back of the leg and stretching that foot in the opposite direction. And other leg, bringing the right leg back through neutral, lengthening the left leg, and pushing through the heel to really open the back of the left leg, as well as stretching the ankle in the opposite direction. And bringing the left leg back through neutral. Pushing yourself back into a child's pose as you press through the hands. Heel, the sits bones reach towards the heels. And now gently coming onto our backs, finding our way onto our backs. Coming into happy baby as we bring our knees close towards the sides of the torso. So we're not taking them wide out. We're going to bring the thighs outside of our thighs outside of our torso, but close, trying to bring them as close as possible to the sides of the torso. And maybe opening one side, the other. The hip flexor is one of the vital muscles in fight or flight mode, when we're in fight or flight mode, which is that mode of stress, of survival. And many of us living in these really high stress jobs or lifestyles that today can be very common, can have that muscle tightened. Now gently keeping the right leg, holding on to the right foot, where you're going to place the left foot down onto the mat. Making sure you're pressing through the heel, keeping the thigh close to the torso. And if it's available, you're going to lengthen the left leg forward, opening that left front of the hip. Holding here. And now gently switching legs, bringing the left leg back in, holding either the foot or behind the knee, and placing the right foot down. If it's available, lengthening the right leg to really get that opening in the front of the right hip. Making sure your shoulders, your head are relaxed. You're not tensing up. If you are, always have the option of grab behind the leg instead of the foot. And now gently bringing the right knee back into the chest, giving yourself a big hug. And we're going to find our way into Navasana, boat pose. You can either rock and roll back and forth or come onto your side and push yourself all the way up into Navasana. Long spine, making sure you feel your sits bones on the ground, not your low back, as you find a long spine. If this feels like too much and you can't lengthen the back, you always have the option to lower your legs a little and place your hands behind you. If not, hold here for 3, 2, and 1. Placing your feet down hip width apart, your hands behind you, reverse tabletop. pushing your hips up. Pressing through the hands and the heels to really lift those hips, looking up. Holding for 5 full rounds of breath. Really making sure the knees are hip width apart. And now gently lowering the hips once again. Coming back into Navasana, holding for 5 full rounds of breath. Gently beginning to activate the core muscles, as well as the psoas. Long spine, feel as the crown of the head lengthens the spine. And now gently place the feet back again onto the mat and lengthen your legs, Dandasana. So pressing through the heels, long spine, shoulders are stacked over the hips. And you're going to place your hands behind you, once again, fingertips facing forward. Pressing through the big toes, you're going to shift the hips up, lift the hips up into reverse plank. Pressing through the big toes, making sure the knees aren't splurging out to the sides. Pushing the hips, lifting them up. For 3, 2, and 1, lowering gently all the way down. Coming back through Dandasana. Long spine, walking your hands forward. Paschimottanasana as you fold forward over your thighs. All toes are facing up. Heart lengthens forward. And coming all the way back up. Crossing your legs, placing your hands in front of you, stepping or hopping back into plank pose. Shifting the hips up, downward facing dog. First down dog of the class. We're going to make it a big down dog. So you can separate your feet a little wider than hip width. Bending your knees, finding a really long spine. And gently walking your hands back towards your feet. Grabbing opposite elbows, letting the torso hang heavy. Bending the knees as much as you need, or maybe even lengthening them, feeling the opening behind the legs as well. Maybe swaying from side to side. And letting go of the elbows, walking your hands back into a downward facing dog. From down dog, shifting forward into plank pose. Lowering all the way down, maybe placing your knees onto the mat or not. We're going to lower all the way down onto our bellies. Placing both forearms onto the mat, coming into Sphinx pose. Bringing the elbows close into the low ribs as you lengthen through the crown of the head. Shoulders are broadening, backs of the feet are pressing down onto the mat. And you're going to reach with your right hand towards your back foot, keeping both shoulders and the torso facing forward. Opening that right thigh, that right front of the hip, and holding here. Gently letting go of the right foot, placing the right forearm back onto the mat, switching sides. Gently letting go, placing both forearms down, lowering your chest onto your mat, placing your hands next to your chest, lifting into baby cobra. Just gently lifting the chest up, Crown of the head lengthens, elbows are tucked in. And lowering down, placing your knees or finding your way into downward facing dog. Once again, shifting forward, lowering this time halfway, or maybe you'll keep it with baby cobra. If not, you're going to lower halfway into chaturanga, upward facing dog. And we'll all meet in downward facing dog. Lifting the right leg up towards the ceiling, opening the hip, bending the knee, opening that right front hip. And closing it off, bringing the right foot into your nose, placing the foot between your hands. Lowering the back knee down, the back of the foot. Lengthening through the crown of the head, feeling both hips lower, opening that left frontal hip. They're both facing forward. And now gently lifting the torso up. Keeping both hips facing forward. Placing the right hand down onto your right hip and reaching the left arm over towards the right. Coming back through center. And now reaching with both hands, if it's available, the back foot. If it's not available, if you have a strap, you can always use a strap. If not, just hold in the low lunge. And gently letting go. Placing both hands down, stepping it back through your vinyasa into plank pose, chaturanga, either with knees on the mat or not. Up dog, downward facing dog. Other side. Lifting the left knee up. Opening the hip, bending the knee. Opening that left frontal hip. And gently closing it off. Bringing the left knee into the nose. Placing the foot between your hands. Lowering the back knee, the back of the foot. And before you lift the torso, feel the crown of the head reaching forward as both hips are facing forward. So they're squared off. And now from here, gently lifting all the way up. Making sure both hips are still facing forward. Taking the left hand onto the left hip, reaching the right hand towards the left. Opening that right side of the body. And back through center. Now reaching both hands towards that back foot. Trying to bring the heel as close to the glute as possible. And gently letting go of the foot. Reaching both hands back down. Going through your vinyasa. Meeting in downward facing dog.
Bending the knees, placing the knees onto the mat, coming into a kneeling position. We're going to come into we're going to do two camel poses as we open the front of the body, opening that hip flexor area. To really make sure to get into the hip flexor area through these poses, we have to make sure to keep our hips over our knees. As soon as we shift them back, we lose that targeted area. As well, this is a deep pose, so feel free to stay wherever it feels right for you. We're going to start with our palms of the hands on our low back. So we're going to use the palms of the hands to push the hips forward, as well as to lengthen the low back. So find that energy of the palms to find a little more length in the low back. As we roll our shoulders back, elbows as if they wanted to touch. Feel free to stay here. If you want to take it a little further, keeping the hips over the knees, walking the hands along the legs, reaching for the heels. As we look up, the heart lifts and the hips remain over the knees. Pushing forward. For 3, 2, and coming all the way back up as we came down. We're going to come one more time. If you were pressing the toes down and you feel like you can go deeper, you can place the backs of your feet onto the ground. Again, hands in the low back as we open our shoulders, lift the heart, and begin to walk the hands down, looking for the heels. Broadening the collarbones, pushing the hips forward. Heart lift. For 3, 2, same way you came down, gently coming up. Coming into child's pose as you press your sits bones towards your heels, pressing the palms of the hands against the mat. Returning to that grounding breath. And placing all toes onto your mat, downward facing dog. Second to last down dog of the class. Just a brief down dog as we shift forward into pigeon pose, bringing the right shin towards the front of the mat as we open the hip, lengthening the left leg back. Before we lower, making sure both hips are facing forward. And from here, surrendering our torso down towards the mat. Again, try not to resist the pose. Instead, feel that sensation of surrender. And through the breath, observe any thoughts or sensations come up. Now gently lifting the torso up, swinging the left leg towards the front of the mat, placing the right foot onto the ground, making sure that it's placed close enough as you can, by still keeping a long spine and the sits bones grounded. So it doesn't need to be jammed in. And we're going to inhale, arms up. On the exhale, twist over towards the right, either hugging the knee in or placing the elbow outside of the right thigh, looking over the right shoulder. Broadening the collarbones, lengthening to the front of the head. Sits bones ground and down. And coming back through center, crossing your legs, placing your hands in front of you, stepping back into downward facing dog. Last down dog. This time, bringing the left shin forward into pigeon pose on the left side, making sure the right leg is straight back, squaring off the hips and lowering down. Lifting the torso up, swinging the right leg forward, preparing for the twist on the other side, placing the left foot down, lifting the arms up and twisting over towards the left, either hugging the knee or placing the elbow outside of the left thigh as we look behind us. If it's too much to look behind you, just look straight where your head is facing, where your torso is facing. And gently return through center. So we're going to begin to prepare to lower onto our backs. But before we do so, we're going to need a block, ideally a block, if not a set of sturdy towels or a sturdy pillow, a stack of books, anything that you feel can replace a block. And if you don't have any, we'll have another option. So we're going to come onto our backs, bending both knees hip width apart, And now, if you don't have a block, you're going to do bridge pose. And you can do it 2, 3 times for 5 breaths each, or whatever feels right. For those who are going to follow me with the prop, we're going to place our feet onto the mat, lifting the hips up, placing the block under the sacrum. The placement of the block is key to the stretch that we're going to do. It usually is a little lower than we think it would be. So it's not in the low back, it's in the sacrum. You can play around until it feels right, and from there you're going to lengthen the legs forward. As you lengthen your legs forward, you should feel this release in the front of the hips. And just surrender, making sure your shoulders are relaxed, your upper body's relaxed. You're sort of looking for these yin qualities in this pose. Feel free to stay here, or if you want to take it a step further, bringing the right knee in. As we hug the right knee in, we're going to feel the left side opening a little deeper. The closer we bring the knee in, the deeper the stretch on the other side. And gently switching sides. Lengthening the left leg out once again, placing both feet onto the mat to lift the hips and take off whatever prop you have under you. Bringing both knees into the chest, giving yourself a really big hug to release that low back, massaging it from side to side. Opening your arms in a T, letting the knees fall over towards the right as you look towards the left. Neutralizing the spine a little after so much front body opening. And gently coming back through center and letting the knees fall over towards the other side as you look over towards the right. Lastly, coming back through center, lengthening the legs forward, arms next to the torso, palms of the hands facing up. If you do have those props with you, you will want to place them under your knees so your knees end up bent slightly. In this case, we're trying to relax completely, and to completely relax, we don't want to feel any tension in the psoas. So as soon as we bend our knees a little, we'll relax our psoas, letting our body come into a completely resting and relaxed position. Letting us surrender ourselves into shavasana. A little easier, a little smoother. Whenever you're ready, we're going to take 3 deep inhales in through the nose, releasing everything through the mouth. Surrendering completely into shavasana. I will leave you here to have as long of a shavasana as you please. I hope you enjoy. Thank you for joining us today. Namaste.